Hi BBT, this is my family, and now I'm going to put the camera down, and once I start the timer, I will begin. On March 9th, in 1892, a successful black businessman by the name of Thomas Moss and two of his business partners was lynched in Memphis, Tennessee. The reason? Their business was causing fellow white businesses to lose customers. As disturbing and heartbreaking as this incident was, it sparked change in a dear friend of Thomas Moss, named Mary Church Terrell. Mary is one of many leaders of the African American community who brought about change because of heartbreak. This devastating event placed a very unlikely person in a very unlikely position. The connecting piece between the emancipation of slaves and the modern civil rights movement is bridged by Mary Church Terrell. She is both a woman and an African American. She shaped the way each and every one of us lives our lives today. Though this country is far from perfect, pioneers like Mary Church Terrell fought for equal rights for all. Through my research, I understand the impact Mary had on not just America, but the world. That is why today I want to shed light on Mary Church Terrell's goal for Washington, D.C. We will do this by seeing how Mary Church Terrell's adaptability made her a leading speaker, show how Mary Church Terrell's speech exposed America's true colors, and by delivering a brief cutting from the speech that changed the U.S. Capitol forever. To begin, let's talk about how Mary's adaptability made her a profound speaker. Firstly, this was because Mary was multilingualistic. According to the book by Dr. Ida E. Jones, archivist at Morgan State University, Mary spoke fluent German, French, and English to her audience in Berlin because she was afraid speaking only English would lessen her impact. Her ability to code switch dismissed language barriers. She understood figurative language, culturally acceptable words, and political correctness. Being multilingualistic also showed she spoke with executive control. This includes, good delivery, good memory, effectively switching while still maintaining focus. Secondly, Mary Church Terrell was a profound speaker because of her selective communication. Mary's speaking style had both direct and indirect verbal cues. Her purpose seemed very clear: to use controversial language without losing her audience. According to Martha Watson, Dean of Urban Affairs at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, in her May 1st, 2009 article titled Mary Church Terrell, she talks on how Mary would avoid personalizing an argument and risking a perception that she is attacking. Adapting verbally for many meant not attacking while still getting her message across. She also was an adaptable speaker because she used feminine language to empower the female audience. Feminine nouns is something that she used. She spoke of feminine entitlement, yet she did not speak with pity. It's interesting because Mary's speaking style depicted suffrage feminism. She used authoritative feminine language. She showed self-love for herself and being a female. According to Margaret A. Nash, grad school professor at University of California, in her April 2nd, 2004 article, Patience Persistence, she says, Mary wasn't afraid to use rhetoric of true womanhood to assert that women had a moral obligation. Mary spoke with complete confidence in every word she uttered with much emotion. Lastly, Mary's noble style of speaking adapted with the elite. According to Jeffrey D. Gonda, winner of the Supreme Court Historical Society Award for 2014, in his September 8, 2016 article, Just Another Southern Town, Mary is depicted as prominent amongst others. She spoke with elegance, wit, and class. According to the Educational Studies by Margaret A. Nash, she tells language reflected an acute elitism and class consciousness. This means that she was able to elaborate effectively to those who were elite, but also she did not separate herself from, class lines. According to the Newspaper Institute of America, 1949, Mary is described as distinguished. She was respectable. She was proper in speech. She was educated and self-assured. We talked about how Mary Church Terrell's adaptability made her a leading speaker. Now we will jump right into why Mary Church Terrell's speech exposed America's true self. From the beginning, Mary's plan was to expose true America. According to the Black Past, an online reference center on blackpast.org, Mary's speech was delivered in October 10th, 1906, which means she was around 43 years old. This speech was given to the United Women's Club in Washington, D.C. There were no entry fees to see this speech because all the people in attendance were members. Mary's speech was very well prepared. In fact, she even planned to get kicked out of a restaurant for it. According to American History magazine on April 2017, Mary was out at a restaurant and the manager told her and her friends they could not be served because of the color of their skin. To his surprise, that was what they had come for. According to the same article, at the time, Mary and company were seeking to retrieve racial discrimination by restaurant laws. After her planned restaurant experiment, she created this speech in order to expose the amount of racism her and her friends dealt with as African Americans in the capital of the U.S. After she gave her speech, Mary received mixed feedback. The members of the Women's Club responded positively to her speech, but on the contrary, according to Story of the Week, a website presented by Library of American on storyoftheweek.org, the text of the speech was published anonymously the following January and immediately circulated amongst America. The speech was well constructed with a lot of figurative language as well. It included metaphors, irony, and an anaphora, all for lasting impression of her audience. So we've discussed how Mary's adaptability made her a profound speaker, why Mary Church Terrell's speech exposed America's true colors, and now I will be delivering a brief cutting from the speech that changed the U.S. Capitol forever. Washington, D.C. has been called the colored man's paradise. Whether this was given to the national capital in bitter irony, it will be difficult to find a worse misnomer. For 15 years, I have resided in Washington, and while it was far from being a paradise for colored people, it has been doing its level best to make conditions for us intolerable. As a colored woman, I might enter Washington any night, a stranger in a strange land, and walk miles without finding a place to lay my head. As a colored woman, I may walk from the Capitol to the White House, ravenously hungry and abundantly supplied with money with which to purchase a meal, without finding a single restaurant in which I would be permitted to take a morsel of food if it was patronized by white people, unless I were willing to sit behind a screen. As a colored woman, I cannot visit the tomb of the father of this country, which owes its very existence to the love of freedom in the human heart, and which stands for equal opportunity to all, without being forced to sit in the Jim Crow section. As a colored woman, there is no way for me to earn an honest living if I am not a trained nurse, a dressmaker, or can secure a position as a teacher in the public schools, which is exceedingly difficult to do. It matters not my intellect or how great need for a competent person. The door is shut in my face. Now, no matter how competent or superior the colored teachers in our public schools may be, they know that they can never rise to the height of a directorship, can never hope to be more than an assistant and receive the meager salary. Therefore, unless the present regime is radically changed, the colored laborer's path to a decent livelihood is by no means smooth. It is impossible for any white person in the United States, no matter how sympathetic and broad, to realize what life would mean to him if his incentive to effort were suddenly snatched away. Nowhere in the world do oppression and persecution based solely on the color of the skin appear more hateful and hideous than in the capital of the United States. Because the chasm between the principles upon which the government was founded, in which it still professes to believe, and those which are daily practiced under the protection of the flag, yawn so wide and so deep. we've discussed, how Mary Church Terrell's adaptability made her a leading speaker, how her speech exposed America's true colors, and how and I delivered a brief cutting from the speech that changed the U.S. Capitol forever. Mary Church Terrell was more than just a visionary. She was a pioneer. She captivated her audience through her feminine, linguistic, relatable, and intellectual speech. What it means to be colored in the capital of the U.S. isn't a defeated battle. Today, blacks in America still face issues because of the color of our skin. But there's still hope. 66 years after Mary's death, her words still ring true when she says, "Lifting as we climb, onward and upward we go, struggling and striving and hoping that buds in the blossoms of our desires will burst into glorious fruition ere long." Thank you.